Wow. Welcome to a Tuesday live podcast. I'm Jen.
I'm Joe.
Gotcha. I'm Joe and this is Jen. And today we're going to be talking about one of my absolute favorite things, which is how to buy real estate without a down payment. Okay. So we're going to do a super deep dive and I've got some extra bonus stuff. So guys, stay tuned. You're going to absolutely love this episode. But I got to say, this is one of the things that I hear probably the most from investors is I want to start learning how to buy real estate with creative finance because coming up with 20% down and going through the bank has been such a challenge and it's hard to scale. And I think of when we first got started, we were burning. So we had to do all of the money down, right? And then handle like contractors and all that. So this is going to
come
be
up with a bunch of cash.
A whole bunch of cash. So today we're going to be diving into how to buy real estate without a down payment. So if you're watching, if you've got any questions, drop them in the comments below. We're going to make sure we get to these today. But this is going to be a really special thing. So when we first got started buying real estate, we were doing, which I didn't know was a thing called BRRRR. We were buying these houses, paying cash. We would remodel the whole house, managing contractors while I still had my job. We were doing all of these other things, and it was just so much. And then I'm chatting with some of my friends and like, hey, listen, I'm buying this house and the bank's requiring 20% down plus closing costs. And that's a lot to do. And if you're going to be scaling and you're going to buy this property and take out a 25 or a 30-year mortgage, you're only going to make usually a few $100 a month. So how do you recoup that huge down payment?
Well, then too, it's like, the creative finance buzzword and sub two and all of that. And I think that, a lot of people want to know, well, why won't you put $60,000 down to a seller? And I think we need to dive into that a little bit more, explaining like the benefits to all parties, what it looks like to actually, when you walk into a creative deal that is no down payment, what sort of expenses to expect? Because even though it's no money down to the seller, guys, there's still going to be costs involved because you are buying a piece of real estate. And with real estate, there's things that cost money. And so we're going to dive into that and, where you should really try to land and fall and some really great, strategies to be communicating with your sellers as to how to structure deals that are win-wins. Because this was even something that came in on a support call today that we were chatting about. There's so many factors to look at when it comes to making a good deal. And I know you just went live briefly about cash flowing properties because that's also really important. So it's not just one thing when it comes to buying real estate investment properties. There are a plethora of things.
Yeah, there's so many different variables to it. So like, here's my favorite saying is if it don't make dollars, it don't make sense. So you got to make sure you're making money on the deal. And I think that's really, really important. One step that kind of gets overlooked. I just went live a few minutes ago, just chatting about like, we do have leads. I've got leads right now in our CRM that the seller says yes.
Only if you did enough deals, maybe then you'd know.
Whatever.
Oh, the keyboard warriors.
Well, when everybody wants to post their opinion in a group and
a free group nonetheless.
Yeah, a free group. Sometimes, you feel like you woke up on third base, walked home and think you hit a home run. And that's not always the case.
So we're going to get into the nitty gritty because we are about actually making money, not just talking about how many doors we own, but what it takes to get into real estate. And we feel very passionate about getting that no money down, that down payment to as close to zero as possible.
Yeah. So one of my key things, and I'm going to break right into it. The key is when we're talking with sellers, we need to find out like, what's their why? Why do they not just list it on the market with an agent? Why would they consider even doing this? And sometimes maybe the best bet is for them to list it on the market with an agent. And there's nothing wrong with that. But however, we run into a lot of sellers. That's just not the case. They don't want to list it on the market for a list of reasons, a long list of reasons, right? So when they're going to be reaching out to an investor, especially in South Florida, there's a lot of people who just went through a hurricane. And there are some people where their houses just got flooded and destroyed and they want to sell quick. There are some people who their house is fine, but they are terrified. And they're like, I am not doing that again. I'm moving back up north to wherever they came from. So is our CRM loaded up with leads? They're just coming in right now. And I'm talking with my investor friends and they're seeing the same thing. So it's not just us, it's happening all over. But what we're doing is we're making smart deals. And when we buy a deal, I want to buy it with no money down. So one of my favorite strategies is finding a motivated seller, somebody who actually needs to sell their house, not just talks about it or maybe one day. So the key to it is work with motivated sellers. If we have to score them on a scale of 1 being the least motivated and the 10 being the most motivated, I'm really working on that 7, 8s, 9s, and 10s, the higher scale of motivation, right? So these are people who are very motivated. It could be a relocation, could be they're terrified of hurricanes. It could be a death, a divorce. There's so many reasons why this is going on right now. And they actually really need to sell. And I think that's been the big thing.
Yeah. And literally the second question we ask people when they come in, they reach their hand like, hey, like I'm interested in selling. And we ask their address and then we want to know why. And people will open right up. And if they're motivated, that motivation is laid out in front of you in black and white, and you'll be able to go back to that and reference that. And so when anyone ever brings us a deal and asks us like, hey, what do you think? It's probably one of the first things we ask them next to the address, like what's the address? And then why are they selling?
Every time. And so that's a big key, right? And if they just want to sell just because they're thinking of it, or, I don't really need to sell, odds of doing a deal with them go down dramatically. So we want to work with motivated sellers who actually need to sell their house and want to. Doesn't have to be a distressed property. These are sometimes beautiful houses in beautiful neighborhoods that doesn't need any work. Now there's times where some of them are a little bit more distressed.
A little bit.
Like our Louisiana deal. We just put one under contract 2 to 3 days ago. Houses in Louisiana. The seller is okay with us taking over their payments. They have a 4% interest rate. They have a payment of $522 a month, including everything. So it's really low. So they said, well, we could write this up subject to you taking a look at the pictures, but we can't get the pictures right away. They sent them over. That girl needs some work. It definitely needs a fixer-upper. But they don't have any equity. They just want to be able to walk away from the deal. So are they motivated? Yes, when you find the backstory. So get around some motivated sellers is the key, number 1. Number 2, it's based on the conversations. And I'm going to give everybody a couple tips right now. Don't insert foot in mouth by giving them, the seller, the offer. So when I'm reaching out or chatting with the seller, we always ask them, why are they selling and things like this, but we make the seller make us the offer. Right. And I think that's part of the key to it is you got to ask them the right questions. Because if you're the one giving all the answers and giving them all the information, you're giving them some research to go sit back and find out if they even want to do business with you or not.
Well, I think that's the point being is that we're so big on asking those questions because a lot of people they just come out swinging and they just like bleh, and they say all these things like, okay, well, I could buy your house and I'll give you $10,000 down or more, and so you don't have to throw those numbers out if you just get really great at asking the questions. And that's where the true negotiation lies. Yeah.
And so this next part, it's a numbers game. Okay. Not everybody you're going to talk to is going to say yes to seller financing.
Really?
I know. It's surprising, right?
But we're so nice.
But it doesn't work, Joe. I'm like, no, it does. You just got to ask a lot of people. So does it work? Yes.
And then follow up too.
And it's a numbers game.
Yeah.
So you have to generate a boatload of leads. If you're going to generate 1 lead a week, it's not going to work that well. It's going to take you forever to make a deal. But if you get really great at generating leads in a massive amounts, then this is going to help cut through all of this a lot quicker for you. Okay. So, and if you don't have it already, go to our website, creativefinanceplaybook.com, and go download for free. It's the ad that we use in Facebook groups that generates us a boatload of leads all around the country for free without ever having to spend a dime, guys. And you don't have to spend money to generate leads. This was a big misconception that I thought I had in the beginning, that I had to spend a lot of money generating leads. You don't have to. So go download that. And if you subscribe to our newsletters, you'll actually get our script and all the other things that our team is using to actually get you some deals, guys. It doesn't cost you nothing to get started, but get started. That's the key. So you got to generate leads. You got to be able to talk to people. You got to know what questions to ask them, right? But then when it comes down to the negotiating, the one key that I always talk to a seller is when we ask our 10 magic questions that we ask every seller when they reach out to us. But the one question, the final question, is that we can buy it at that price if they're open to doing terms like seller financing by us taking over their existing mortgage or coming up with some type of payment plan that would work for them. If they say yes to this, this is where we get on the phone. This is where we pick up the phone. We actually have the live conversation with the sellers. So one of the key things that we always talk about is, hey, Jen, I typically buy with no money down. Okay.
No, I need money for my next house.
Okay. Well, because I pay all the closing costs and buy as is. If I were to give you a small down payment, what's the least you think you need to make the deal work for you?
Well, I have this house in Florida and I know, it's probably worth like way more. So I'm looking at least like $100,000 of equity. So I was hoping for that.
Well, I mean, if I were to be able to do that, but I were to do it like down the road, not up front, would that work?
No, I need money today.
Got it. So what's the least you would need to get it done today?
I need to get a U-Haul. I need to pack everything. Probably even like a pod. I mean, probably like 30,000.
So is there any way we could get this done for like 2,000 to 5,000? No? You're tough. Get it, Tiger. I like it. I like it. So, but this is the conversation.
But that's reality.
Yeah.
You're going to have this conversation and you have to really be able to bob and weave. So, but you just moved me from 100 grand to 30 to possibly less.
And so here's where sometimes I got to tell you guys, this is where I bail. I just say, hey, Jen, I like the house. I'd love to do business. And I think we can. We're not terribly far away, but I can't do $30,000 down to make that deal work. Is there any way we could get closer to $5,000, maybe even like $6,000?
Well, let me talk to my husband.
Right. When's a good time we could get all on a call together? He sounds like a great guy.
Yeah, he works a lot. He'll probably be home around like 9:30.
Cool. Let's call. Right. But this is the conversation we have. So I've had some people start off with, I need 100 grand down. We make the deal with $10,000 down. But we're talking today about buying with no money down.
Right.
Okay. So some of my favorite.
That was a tricky seller. I was just being.
I like it. Well, I need a little bit of difficulty in my life. You make
Do you?
What does that mean?
I feel like it's a little difficult lately with no internet and hurricanes and all the things. But hey,
But that's the key, guys. So it's happening.
If you have a motivated seller on the flip side, that person maybe has no equity and they can't float the 2 mortgage payments because they've already moved and they're like, take my house.
So let's talk about Audie, not the car, the seller. His name is Audie.
I don't know who that one is.
He's the guy who's got the house in Cape Coral, Florida.
Oh, goodness.
He wants $950,000 for his home. He owes $500,000 on it. He's got $450,000 worth of equity. And Lexi on our team talked to him before I did. And when I got on the phone with him and said, hey, I know you chatted with Lexi, and she mentioned that you would be open to seller financing if we could agree on price and terms. Is that right? And he's like, yep. I said, perfect. Now you're asking $950,000 for the house. If we were to pay if we were to pay that price and cover all the closing costs, can we get any better on the price? And he was like, no, I really want $950,000. I said, got it. I said, and he said, especially because Lexi tells me that you guys are going to buy with no money down. I was like, oh, I felt so good, right? And I was like, well, she does have a point because we do cover both sides of closing costs, our side and your side, and that will save you some money there. And he was totally okay with doing the deal. And Audie's got a 2.99 interest rate. Ooh. So it's a low rate. He's got I'd love to say it's a low payment, but it's not. The taxes on $1 million property are like $16,000 a year, and the insurance is another $15,000. So between taxes and insurance, it's a little over $30,000 a year just for those 2 things. You haven't made a payment on the principal or interest yet, or an HOA. So all in, Audie's payment is about $5,000 a month. So even there on that deal with no money down, my gosh, that's a tight deal. What are the comps? What do they rent for? I'm finding some comps in that neighborhood on the water. They all rent for about $3,500 to $4,000 a month. So if his payment's starting off at $5,000, that's negative cash flow. And guys, once again, going back to the beginning, if it don't make dollars, it don't make sense. So some of these deals we actually have to just say no to. Can't do it. Doesn't make sense. I got it. But here's a seller. He's extremely motivated. He's a 10 motivation. He's getting divorced. He's already moving back up north where he's from. He says, I have all this equity and I don't even need the money. I just need to get this payment off my back. So he's okay with doing no money down. So here's where I scratch my head and think, okay, this is like your ideal situation. 299 rate, beautiful house on the water, pool, boat lift, says yes to terms, will give us a 10-year term with no money down. These are the deals that we look for. But guys, also second half of that, it needs the cash flow too, as a rental.
Yeah. Well, the one that pops in my head real quick, as far as talking about like no money down, like they didn't need, was it was an Airbnb. I know we talk about it, but it was like one of our favorite deals. But again, it was just such a beautiful example of a seller not needing to sell because he wanted his equity.
What was that?
None to Boulevard.
Oh, you're right.
Yeah. So
I was like, which one was that?
here's the tip. If you know anyone that knows anyone in Airbnb, like get in the know, join the Facebook groups, go listen in on those conversations. There are plenty of people who got into Airbnb and they are tired. They are tired Airbnb operators, owners. Maybe they realize it's not the business they want to be running. And that honestly, it doesn't have to just be an Airbnb. That's just a beautiful example because I think that market got pretty saturated over the last couple of years. And now that here we are in 2024, life looks a lot different than it did 2 years ago. So, put your feelers out there. If you haven't just posted on social yet that you're able to purchase properties and help people out, taking over payments, hopping on phone calls, asking these questions, that's what you need to be doing. And that's really the heart of this whole business, is just talking to people and asking those questions and seeing how you can help. And, if the motivation is clear enough, then there's a total win-win scenario for you, because I think of that seller in particular, and he was just like, I would love you to take over my payments. I'm ready to sign. Where do we go?
So gorgeous house, beautiful neighborhood, Airbnb, was a big house. And he's like, Joe, every single time the people staying there, once they leave, it takes all day long to clean the house. It's got an attic that's fully furnished. It's got the second floor. It's got the first floor, and it's got a furnished basement.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a gorgeous house. So these are people who actually were super motivated. They wanted to sell. He's like, I got my last booking scheduled. Then after that, I don't want to be stuck making this payment every month. So I want to sell.
Mm-hmm.
So when I asked him, we typically buy with no money down. Okay. He said, okay.
And it was a word of mouth referral. So like none of your fancy marketing budget went to that one. It was literal straight up like, hey, I know a person who knows a person. So I'm telling you, don't sleep on it.
You're dropping some major nuggets.
Hey,
right now.
I'm here to help. I'm giving away all of our best secrets because I know that there's people out there struggling right now. I know that there are Airbnb folks, there are landlords that maybe got a couple properties and realize like, man, this is not what I want to be doing. I don't have the willpower, the manpower, whatever it is. Maybe life situations change. People get divorced, people pass away. Like life can be messy and really hard sometimes. And so we as the investors can put on our superhero capes and say like, okay, like how can I help you? And you can do so just by asking a couple questions. And therefore, you don't need to come out of pocket with thousands and thousands of dollars to a seller if the right situation presents itself.
Well, also too, we're dealing with a lot of inflation,
Mm-hmm.
right? Everything costs more than it did even just a few years ago. So inflation, I'm talking about like, what's the loaf of bread? What's the groceries? I look at what $100 in a grocery cart used to fill up. And now I look at it, now it's like a handful of bags for $100.
I mean, it's like $6 for a jar of queso these days. It's insanity.
Was that really?
Yes.
Jeez. So everything costs more. So what am I getting at? Well, maybe somebody in the last 3-4 years have bought a house recently. Sometimes it was their very first house.
Mm-hmm.
And then they realize that the payment is at the max of their budget, but now they're taking care of maintenance, repairs, utilities, upkeep, plus having bills for other things. And they're just in over their head. I'm seeing that a lot right now.
Mm-hmm.
So with that being the case, there's sometimes folks don't have a lot of equity. And so we're finding more and more of these just coming in where I just want to downsize. I don't want all this maintenance. I don't want all this overhead. I just want to be able to rent a condo or an apartment, or I'm moving in with a family. We had one of those today. She's like, I'm selling 2 houses. This is back in New York. She's like, one's a condo in East Rochester, and she wants to sell her house in Hilton. And she's like, I am done owning all this stuff. I'm going to be moving in with family. And so she wants to downsize and sell her stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So we're coming across these more and more. So a lot of our leads that we used to get, we were only looking at making cash offers on these properties, but we had to get a really big discount. And that's because they needed a lot of work. But like these turnkey houses that are absolutely beautiful, that don't need anything, those are the deals we used to pass on. I didn't know how to address these.
Mm-hmm.
But now if I could buy it with seller financing, or I could buy it and just take over their existing payments and pay that through their lender, you could create wins now and don't have to lowball people on getting these deals done. You could actually pay a very fair price for the house and make your sellers happy, make you as the buyer happy too. And this is what leaves some people scratching their head is how can you pay that much for the property? Well, I'm going to break down a little bit of a scenario. One, we're closing like next week, or when are we closing New Smyrna?
Guess as good as mine.
I know it's coming soon, but this is a house that was built it's in Florida, New Smyrna Beach. House is built just 2 years ago. It's a 2022 built house. Beautiful house, beautiful neighborhood, doesn't need anything. The seller is selling. Do you know why?
Are they moving?
They're moving to Austin, Texas for his job to get relocated.
Mm-hmm.
We even asked him, why don't you just put it on the market and sell it? He's like, I don't have time. He's already moved. She's living there still, just kind of cleaning up behind it. We don't have time. We just want this thing sold right away. We don't want to have to pay a real estate commission because they don't have much equity. So when we talk to them about us buying it and taking over their existing mortgage, because they do have a low rate and a low payment. And once we explained how we could buy it, this was a no-brainer for them. Now on this one, I think we are putting down $10,000, which is a lot. But when you're looking at a $300,000 home, and putting down so little and covering closing costs, guys, the cost of entry on those deals are way, way, way less than doing the conventional way. And that property is going to rent for probably $2,500, $2,600. However, newsflash, we're going to do a rent to own, which is our favorite strategy because my renters, they're going to give me $20,000 to $30,000 to move into that property, right? So the money we had to come up with, we'll get that right back and then rent it to them and make some cash flow every month on a turnkey property. So those are our favorite deals. But when we're negotiating sellers, we want to get that close to zero down as possible. So the favorite phrase to use is, if I pay your price, I typically buy with no money down, okay? Just that simple, right? And then if they give you a rebuttal, sometimes they say, okay. If they do, great, move on. If they say, no, I need a down payment, find out what's the least down they're going to need to make the deal work. But now it's time to do your calculations, your cash on cash return. But you have to know how much money do I need to come up with the closing table? I got a down payment. We got closing costs. We got an insurance policy. We have to make sure we're paying the utilities, right? Once they move out. So there's going to be a much more to it than just no money down. So when you add up, the seller wants $10,000 down plus closing costs, there's probably another $7,000 plus the insurance policy. We're going to need $20,000 to buy that deal. Luckily, that's why we love rent to own, because my renter, they're going to give me that 20 grand back. And that's why this is our favorite strategy, how to achieve more with less, right? How to keep on growing your portfolio without giving away all your cash. And so this has been our favorite strategy by far. We've been going on it now since 2017. We have helped many people turn from renter into a homeowner, which is great. We've had some people where for some reason they moved out. And that's okay too. You get the property back and you offer it to the next people. So there's a lot of opportunities there. But with buying these properties, look for off-market deals. This is another strategy I'm going to talk about. There's plenty of properties where you're seeing them on the market. Well, you have to remember, if they're on market, there's going to be a real estate agent involved, and they're going to want to get paid. So if you have a house that's on the market and you find it, you have to pay now a real estate commission. The seller still might want a small down payment. And then you've got closing costs. So your cost of buying the deal, what we call cost of acquisition, goes up. And it goes up dramatically. So this is why keeping your cost of acquisition down to almost zero is key.
And it really is all in what you're saying and the questions that you're asking, and just not, like I said before, you're not throwing out random numbers. Like, I know we all want to like help people and you can help people, but you also don't have to give away all of the cash, like Joe said, that you're going to need to also maybe make a couple mortgage payments while you're looking for that rent to own buyer, and, put it on the utilities and stuff like that. So it all adds up really quickly. So if you can be super conscientious of where your cash is going and be mindful, that's really important.
So key, okay? I'm going to summarize this. Key to getting properties with no money down. First, attract a lot of leads. Get a lot of sellers, okay? Like we talked about, favorite way is Facebook. If you find a better way, tell me. I'd like to know, but this has been our favorite right now. It's working really well. So attract a lot of leads in abundance. Then you have to make the calls. You got to have the conversations. Make sure you're not telling them, oh, I'll buy that with $50,000 down, okay? right? No, that sounds terrible. Don't say that. I always say I typically buy with no money down, okay? And then understand if you don't make the deal at that point, that's okay. There's many times where it might be a couple days, it might be a few weeks, it might be even a few months, and their situation changed, and now that numbers came down.
Yeah, we're never desperate to do a deal. And I think that's really important too. When we were first learning it, you get so excited and you want to do the deal and you just want to make it happen. But like it has to work out on paper. It has to make sense for both of you.
And I got to tell you, when we first started this, I thought something was wrong. I thought something was wrong with me, which, hey, that's a whole other podcast. But what I thought was wrong was I had so many of these sellers that were like, hey, I'll do terms, but I want 80 grand down. I want $75,000 down. And I'm thinking to myself, my gosh, this just isn't working. But then when I realized that was the first call.
Yeah.
Right. And then it's usually a series of calls. So if you see us writing up a deal or we're closing a deal, there's usually weeks, if not months of conversations before we get to that point where we're even writing it up, better yet, closing it. So you got to understand is on the first call, if they don't agree to that, that's okay. Don't throw out that lead. The fortune is in the follow-up. So you got to constantly follow up with the folks, especially the high motivated ones. So attract abundance of leads. Make sure you're spending the most amount of your time with the smallest group, which are the most motivated ones. Make your offers. And you're going to make your offers by asking questions and have the seller make you the offer. But it's time to counter offer. If you heard when we role played earlier, Jen says, I need 100 grand down. I said, yeah, but can we do like 2 to 5 grand down? Right. So if I'm going to make a counter offer, it's going to be something very low because I'm called anchoring. Does everybody know what anchoring is? Yes. It's when I'm going to be dropping down. I buy with 0 down. That's my anchor. And then if I go above that, that means I'm going to pay slightly more than that. I didn't jump up to 50 grand or 25,000. I was like, no, can we do 2 to 5? And we're going to keep in that range, right? Because once again, I know down payment, closing costs, insurance policy, we have our utilities. I usually like to sack away 3 months of payments. So that's how long it takes me to find my renter. So when I add that number up, that's how much money we're going to need for the closing table. So the key, attract leads, guys, get them in abundance.
And on the flip side, don't get one dealitis where if you do get someone that says yes to terms, no money down, don't put your feet up. Don't just say, oh yeah, here we go. Because you never know what can happen.
Well, and that happened to us all the time.
It just happened with the one seller, another Jacksonville seller. He had said no money down, and then something happened with his credit a couple months ago, and then
his credits got
stolen or something.
Somebody somehow stole his credit, and now he couldn't. Yeah, he was qualified for the other house. I will sell you my house, no money down. We're writing it up. Life is great. And then he's like, hey, I'm waiting to close on my house, but I can't close on it. And then there was this big roadblock, right? He says that somebody stole his credit. And now he's going to have to work with some company to remove all the stuff on there. And it's going to be set back.
So it's like not letting yourself get emotionally attached to the deal whatsoever. Like really make sure it's you're compassionate for the seller, but you're transactional with like the whole thing itself, I feel like.
Yeah, because right now I saw one of my friends who he owns a transaction coordinating company, which means when you write up a deal and you need somebody to help you with the paperwork between you and the attorney, that's what his company does. And he said 60% of deals right now are not closing.
Holy moly.
60%. So if you're writing up 10, he said 6 of them fall off, 4 are actually closing. So things happen. You got to understand what Jen said, don't get one deal-itis. That means I got one deal. I stopped marketing. I stopped talking to sellers. Oh my gosh, this is the one.
The one.
Right. And then something happens and that deal goes backwards or there's a delay. And now you have to start up your marketing engines all over again. You got to start up your seller leads all over again.
It's almost like, in sports, like, okay, so if you won the one game, you can't just be like, cool, I won last week's game. I don't really have to try the next week. Like, no, you got to like get back on the field and you got to win again. So just that mentality of like forging ahead and staying mentally strong and just not getting too overly excited or too overly upset and just kind of like in that, like, what do you say? Like, be like water.
Yeah. Well, I think of Bill Belichick, the coach from the New England Patriots.
Love him or hate him.
He's a great coach. And the one thing they were talking about was a game his team just got smoked. The Patriots got beat. Tom Brady just had like a bunch of interceptions. And like, so what do you think of the game? He's like, we're on to Cincinnati the next game.
Oh, yeah.
And he was like, well, do you think your team could have been done better in the red zone? He's like, we're on to Cincinnati, which is the next game. And every single time that reporter asked them different questions, he's like, yeah, I'm already thinking about the next game. Like, I can't take back that last game. I'm always on to the next one. So if you have that deal, just don't freak out. Just keep going, guys. The number one thing, generate leads. If you have an abundance of leads coming in, that solves so many problems. When you don't have anybody to talk to, that's where the problems happen. So
you're sitting there like twiddling your thumbs, like that's where you should really be concerned. So there's so many ways to market yourself. There's plenty of ways, free and paid, to generate the leads. And, you know, just making sure that you're talking to everybody. Like when you go to meetups in your local area, if you're having coffee with a friend, you know, just, it's not being salesy. It's honestly letting people know like, hey, I'm here to help. And once you kind of switch your mindset to that and you get through like any sort of hurdles that you might have, maybe you're listening to this podcast and you're like, well, it sounds great. You guys have been doing it forever. It sounds so easy. You know, no money down, no down payments to anybody. It's all a journey. And I have to just say, like, sometimes you have to take like a deep breath, as one of our coaches says, it's a breathing exercise, and you just have to like one step at a time. And, you know, if there's a mental block there, then, you know, get around the right books and podcasts and kind of get through that. And then the next step is putting it out there like, hey, this is how I can help you, and standing strong in that, but then knowing you've got to make sure it works both sides.
Well, so what if it takes 100 people, 100 no's to hear one yes?
It might.
What if it's 200?
What if it's 4?
Okay, well then guess what? Get 400 leads. Get 400 leads. Talk to 400 people.
Like 4.
or 4, right?
Like you just don't know. Like you just have to keep continually posting. We call it the blue ad. You're putting on your personal Facebook page. You're posting into Facebook groups. You're looking at Facebook Marketplace. You're driving to ice cream with your family. And you see a for sale by owner. Like I love those deals, because a lot of times, especially if they're hard to read, those are the ones you need to call, because nobody else is gonna.
Well, so I got to say too, it's like, not for nothing, guys. We got a bunch of properties. We have been doing this for a long time. We might be driving somewhere and see a little like rundown, crappy for sale by owner sign in someone's front yard. We stop. We pull over. We take the picture. We get the phone number. We get the address, right? And then we're going to reach out to that seller to find out maybe we could do a deal. And some of my favorite deals that we've done.
My favorite are the land deals, like just little lots that maybe a house burned down and someone's just now selling the lot there, or it's just a vacant lot that somebody passed away and now it's inherited and the kids don't want it. So don't sleep on any of those too. So it's just like kind of get it in your head that I'm a deal maker and I'm going to be able to find these properties and I'm going to be able to find the people that need my help. I remember it was like 2017, 2018. We just started out like putting our Facebook business page out there. And I think we didn't know what we were doing. And we like tried to boost an ad. And it was like, if you have an unwanted property, and people kind of came at us, who has an unwanted property? And I remember like, I don't know, who does have an unwanted property?
We got like so defensive over it.
I know. And I was like, remember being deeply like upset. But then I questioned myself. I was like, well, maybe he's right. Like, I don't have an unwanted property. But then you have to unwind your own beliefs and you have to really put yourselves in the shoes of these sellers, which is a little easier now that we're years into this. But I did have an unwanted property once I met this guy, because I moved in with him and now I have a house in the city and I didn't know if I really wanted to rent it out, and the city is kind of, not my favorite place to rent. And so next thing you know, I have an extra property, an unwanted property. And lo and behold, how many sellers have we talked to and helped out because the same thing happened where he met a woman and moved in with her. And now his bachelor pad turned into a frat house and he didn't want that anymore. So
we actually bought that deal.
I know. Or a lady found her new husband. And so her rental, so like it really happens. And this is coming from question number 2. Why are people selling? And that's why we're so passionate about it, because once you find out the story behind how they ended up with this extra house, but people don't know unless you explain. So some of our best deals have come from us going live, sharing these stories. So there's another tip for you. Use this silly little thing, make a video and make some money and help some people out.
Well, I think we spend so much time on social media scrolling, looking at what other people are doing, but like these are tools. We've made millions from just using our phones and just messaging and making posts and things like that. So use your phone as a tool, not as a distraction. So we're going to get to 2 questions and then we're going to wrap this up today, guys.
Yeah.
So one of the questions, and we're going to get to, is
Which one,
the
Melissa?
top one. Yeah,
All right,
Melissa.
here we go. Thanks for joining us today, Melissa.
Good to see you.
Is there a lower rent amount for rent to own?
So lower rent amount. No, we don't. We charge market rent. So if I have a house that is very similar to the one I am offering rent to own on, and that house rents for $1,500 a month, I'm going to price my house around $1,500 a month, maybe a little bit tiny higher, but I'm not going to generally want to go a lot lower, because here's the thing. In this country, in the US, people are payment shoppers. They are looking for a payment. And if you're offering rent to own, but that payment is drastically higher than what it normally would rent for, your phone's not going to ring. I'm just going to give you a news flash. So I always look at rental comps, and I do that by Zillow. I might look at what apartment complexes are renting for in the area just to get like a baseline, right? A 2-bedroom apartment is going to rent for this in an apartment complex. Well, obviously a whole house with a garage, I'm going to get significantly more. And then I'm looking also too, what are other houses renting for in the area? And on Zillow, which is neat, it'll tell you how long has the house been available. If I see a house that's been listed for 243 days as a rental and it still hasn't rented yet, maybe they probably have it too high. So I want to get a little bit aggressive with my rent price, because I want to attract a lot of phone calls, because most of the people who reach out don't have very much for a non-refundable option deposit. That big option deposit they're going to need to move in. Many people don't have that, and that's okay. It's a numbers game, just like when you're buying. So when we are advertising it, I keep my rent aggressive to keep the phones ringing, to keep the messages coming in, so we get asked the questions to see if they have some money, if they do really want rent to own, and the best of the best get to see the house, and that's where we're making our deals. So the rent, keep it at market value, what they're getting in the area.
Great question. And then one of our favorites, Sean, what is your best method for generating leads?
Thanks for coming in today, Sean.
Hey.
So our best method, so there's 2 different thoughts on this. If you're just starting off, I feel like in the beginning, especially if you're new, you might mess up. Even when you get real good at this, you're still going to mess up, believe me. But when you're new, just starting off, my favorite way is to do it is by getting free leads. Because if you mess up, but you spent a whole lot of money getting those leads, well, geez, that gets to be very stressful. You're putting a lot of pressure on yourself. I just spent $5,000 on direct mail, and I'm messing up these leads because I don't know what to do. Let me tell you.
You're talking from experience?
I am talking from experience, okay? Because we've done that before. No joke. We've done that. So in the beginning, especially if you're just starting off, there's nothing wrong with getting some free leads. But I know people knock on doors, they drive for dollars. All of the things work, don't get me wrong. But with these little phones, if I want to start joining, if I want to look for deals today, and I'm just picking up random cities, but Cleveland, Ohio. If I want to look for Cleveland, Ohio properties, I join Cleveland, Ohio Facebook groups. I'm going to post my blue post in these Facebook groups that are all around Cleveland, Ohio. It doesn't cost me anything for doing it. Once again, we share how to do it right on our website, Creative Finance Playbook. Go get it for free.
Right there for you. And if you are having trouble navigating that site, here's his phone number.
So yeah, and also too, guys, if you get a deal, because we do buy a lot of deals, if you have one you're working on and you want us to buy it from you, or you have that question about putting a deal together, hit me up on my cell phone, text me, 585-207-2240. That's my actual cell phone number. Don't be surprised if I answer, because I do. But that's if you got a deal and you're close to putting it together. We'd love to help. And that's the name of just helping these sellers, because there's more of these people out there in these jams that have an actual real estate problem than there are people looking for them. So this is why join these Facebook groups, get the post out there, get people reaching out to you, digitally raising their hand saying, I have a real estate problem and I need some help. Not everybody could be helped. I understand that, but we can help so many people. It's just the best. There we go, guys.
All right, guys. So if you have more questions, come find us on socials. Jenn Delafave on Instagram, Joseph Delafave on Instagram. We're always on Facebook, and we love our YouTube channel. And if you love what you're hearing and you haven't yet gone over to Apple or Spotify, can you go give us a review? We're looking to just make sure we're bringing you the best possible speakers and motivating podcasts for you each and every week. We are coming out with 2 a week for you. So stay tuned. On Fridays, we drop a brand new episode every single Friday. Friday. So make sure you're logged in for that. And otherwise, we will come live again next Tuesday with some new and exciting things. And if you're in the Bradenton, Florida area, we have our local meetup happening next Tuesday at Oscura, October 29th, and that'll be 6 p.m. Eastern. So if you are looking to come down to Florida, come hang out with us.
I'd love to see you. Let's hang out, talk some real estate stuff, guys.
You're so welcome. Until next time, guys, have a great day and take care.
See you guys.